The Orland Empire is the fiefdom of Lanster and the place where the main character studies. The teacher announces that they will study magicians today and invites the children to meditate in order to concentrate. One of the children says that anyone can do it, but the other child is surprised by looking at the main character and says, "Is it really Lane Lanster?" Our protagonist sits on a rock and reflects that 8 years of studying in a preschool group have passed, and some of his peers have already become independent magicians, but he still can't even meditate. However, he wants to find out the truth about what happened that year, and for this he needs to become a sage-level magician. Suddenly, the guys who practiced magic beat Lin and pretend that it happened by accident. One of the attackers admits that he was so absorbed in practice that he accidentally got carried away and hit Lin. He also asks why Lin didn't use his magic defense to block the attack. Lin does not understand how she will respond to them. The other boys continue to insult Lin, hinting that he is not the real son of the Lord, but only an adopted one. This leads to Lin starting to think about how boys can stab knives into his heart with their own words. Suddenly, a knight in armor appears, who tells the boy to stop holding his sword near his neck. But the boy continues to insult the master, and the knight prepares his sword to punish him. Then the protagonist Lin intervenes and tells the knight Mr. Carl to lower his sword. Mr. Carl begins to apologize and says that he wanted to punish the boys for what they did to the master. Lin asks him if the sword that the king gave him is intended to be used against commoners. Mr. Carl understands his mistake and promises not to repeat again. Lin then asks Mr. Carl why he came to him. Mr. Carl begins to apologize for not saying so right away and says that the gentleman received a letter from Mr. Oliver. Lin recalls that Mr. Oliver helped hide his identity the year his father was in an accident. Lin knows he can't perceive magic, but Mr. Oliver tried to help him in every way possible, and this time he probably found something. Lin gets up and goes to the castle on the trough. As Lin reaches the place, he comes out of the trough and meets his father, but in fact, it is his mother's older brother, Blaine Lanster. Blaine says they have a message from Mr. Oliver, and they should listen to it together. Lin realizes that he should call Blaine uncle, but in order not to reveal his identity, they must continue to look like an exemplary father and son. They get to the letter, and Duke Blaine says, "Baby, read the letter." After these words, the letter itself magically opens. In the letter, Oliver's voice greets the Duke and informs him that he has found an unusual magic book that can help Lin awaken his magic. Lin doubts his abilities and Duke Blaine comforts him, saying that not everyone can become a magician. However, Lin can't just ignore her father's betrayal and his disappearance in dragon territory. He doesn't know if his father is alive, and as his son, he can't ignore it. Lin was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about his life. He was a young man full of hopes and dreams, but his fate was confusing and unpredictable. He always knew that his uncle was doing everything for him, and thanks to him, he grew up strong and independent. However, Lin never forgot about his real family and what he had lost. He was a child when his father went on long expeditions, and every time his father came home, Lin was happy to meet him. His father brought him new toys and told him fascinating stories about his adventures. One day, my mother asked my father if he would leave again, to which my father replied that this was his last expedition, and that he would not leave his family anymore. But when Lin's father and mother disappeared without a trace, he was left alone with his pain and grief. However, Lin will not give up. He decided that he would find his father, gather his broken family, and regain his happiness. It was difficult for him, but he did not doubt his goal. He knew that only he could do it, and he was willing to do anything to achieve his goal. Lane looked at the book and thought, "Can this magic book help him awaken my powers?" When he started reading the book, she realized that the teaching method described inside was different from orthodox magic. In general, I have experienced failures countless times, which should happen this time. Lin starts meditation and says there's nothing wrong with trying. But unfortunately, he again fails. He hits the wall hard with his hand and says that he has failed again. However, suddenly he realizes that he can accept magical power. When he starts doing this, he starts coughing and feeling bad. Lin notices that the amount of magic power has increased and continues coughing up blood. He says that his body is about to explode and realizes that he can't just die because he has to find his father. He starts screaming and throwing out a huge stream of magic, but then he notices that the magic power has disappeared and everything around has instantly turned black. Lin realizes that he needs to go out and see what happened. Lin accidentally touches a red egg, not understanding what kind of object it is. He says it's an egg ball, but suddenly an electronic window appears in front of him, which introduces itself as Mr. Luster's butler. He tells Lin that he has been waiting for him for more than 10 years and invites him to the sacred estate, Dragon Farm. After they teleport to the farm, Lin asks if there are dragons nearby, to which the butler replies that there is a dragon egg next to him. Lin realizes that it is a dragon egg and receives a warning from the butler that he will not be able to return to his world until he raises the first dragon and completes the main task of feeding it. Lin starts to get indignant, but suddenly hears the shell of a dragon egg crack and sees the dragon's paw. Then the butler reminds him that he must drip his blood on the egg before the shell bursts, otherwise the dragon will eat it after hatching. In a panic and rush, Lin drips her blood onto the dragon egg to raise her first dragon and complete her task on the farm. Lin drips her blood on the egg at the last moment, and a huge magical force comes out of it, which repels the main character. He watches as a small dragon hatches from the egg, which surprises Lin. He thinks it's a cute little creature, and there's nothing to be afraid of. However, the cub begins to speak the language of dragons and beats the hero with his paws. The main character realizes that he can speak the language of dragons. Lin hears that the task is completed, and the butler congratulates the hero on the arrival of his first dragon. He gets 5 experience and 50 gold as a reward for beginners. The butler also informs the hero that he must build a fire dragon nest in order to complete the main task and get 5 more experience and 50 gold. Gold can be used to buy feed, build, and expand fields. System gold and real gold have an exchange rate of 1-to-1. Lin, thinking about how to create a home for a small fire dragon. He decides to create a nest for 100 gold and receives a reward in the form of 5 experience and 50 gold. The nest can hold a limit of 500 gold per day, which makes the little dragon happy. Lin tries to come up with a name for the dragon and decides to call it Oya, because the little dragon often utters this phrase. After the baby has fallen asleep, Lin follows the instructions of the system and performs several simple tasks. He studies every detail of the farm with interest, examines the surroundings, and discovers that owning a farm can be quite comfortable. Finally, when he is satisfied that everything is in order, Lin asks if he can leave the farm. After receiving a positive response, he presses the exit button and teleports back. However, when he opens his eyes, he sees Uncle, Mr. Carl, and Baby Jack above his head. It turns out that Lin smashed the ceiling with his magic power when he tried to teleport. The uncle asks if it was Lin, to which the protagonist realizes that he can perceive magical power thanks to the magic book that Mr. Oliver gave him. Now Lin is thinking about how to use her new abilities to help others and be useful. To find out why he got into a strange world when he awakened his magic, Lin asks the knight Mr. Carl to look at the magic book. Lin asks him to follow the instructions from the book to improve and tell him if he feels something strange. Lin is in a meditation position and thinks about the fact that after reading the book, neither Mr. Carl nor Uncle felt anything unusual. He begins to think that perhaps only he can enter this mysterious place, and every time he wants to tell the others about it. He also mentions that he starts coughing up blood while meditating, and the butler warns him that the dragon's level is limited by his logical level of strength enhancement. It can lead to an explosion. The ranch quickly raises the level of Lin's dragon, but Lin believes that the stupid system does not allow you to increase the level of magical power. When Lin sits in his world, he often receives emails from the butler, and because he receives them very often, he always ignores them. He notices that no one else sees these windows, and sometimes he feels isolated from the rest of the world. During dinner with his uncle, he notices that lately he has lost his appetite. His uncle also notices this and advises him to eat well and take care of his body, because in order for him to have a lot of strength to practice magic, he needs to eat well. Uncle says Master Oliver is coming soon to help Lin practice magic at Street Iris Academy. He found out about the incident when Lin smashed the ceiling with his magic power and decided to help him master magic. Master Oliver is an experienced magician who can teach Lin how to use his power correctly and effectively. Lin feels excited and ready for the new adventures that await him at Street Iris Academy. Lin remembers the best academy of the Orlando Empire, Iris Academy. He remembers that Mr. Oliver, the deputy dean of this academy, and he was the teacher of the protagonist's father. Lin's father was considered the most gifted student. Suddenly, Lin receives a notification about the health of her eye dragon, which has dropped below 10. If he doesn't feed his dragon every day, then he will die, and the rancher will become a dragon egg. The main character begins to take care of his dragon, feed him, and notices that thanks to good sleep and nutrition, the dragon's level rises to the first level. After that, our Lin communicates with his dragon. The butler notices that Lin is looking more and more like a skilled owner of Ranchi. Lin begins a discussion with the butler, to which the butler reminds him that thanks to him he has magical abilities, and invites him to visit an open training location due to the increased level of his dragon. Lin gets to the training ground. He starts asking questions about how to meditate and balance so as not to fall. However, after 5 seconds, he falls through and a hammer weighing 40 tons rushes at him. The main character screams in fright and gets hit in the face. He begins to lose his balance, but the board holds him with magical bonds. The butler explains to the main character that he cannot leave the room until he can meditate for at least 5 seconds. The main character begins to doubt whether the butler is teaching him or trying to kill him. However, he continues to try to meditate, repeatedly making many mistakes, many failures, until finally he reaches the goal and the butler congratulates him on raising the magic level to the first level. After 7 days of intense training, Lin felt tired in every cell of his body. His fingers trembled with tension as he tried to cast a spell to create a fireball. However, instead of an impressive ball, only a small light that flickered in front of his eyes escaped from his hand. This result caused deep disappointment for Lin, who dreamed of mastering the power of magic. Next to Lin was little Jack, who started mocking him when he found out about his failure. This caused anger and rage in Lin, who could not afford to lose in front of a child. So he decided to try using his fireball to hit little Jack. However, the boy was very agile and dodged the attack. At that moment, a window appeared on the screen with a message from the butler that the power of magic depends on the owner of the ranch. This made Lin think that perhaps he needed to study the properties of magic more thoroughly and understand how to use it correctly. So he decided to try again. Lin chased after little Jack, and little Jack, frightened by what was happening, ran away, and Lin thought that his quiet days in this estate were over. We are shown how Uncle receives an invitation letter to Street Iris Academy for Lin from Mr. Oliver. Lin finds out about this and hugs her uncle tightly. Almost all the residents of the city applauded and admired Lin's way. He goes on the road in a carriage, accompanied by a little boy Jack. During the day, Jack takes Lin to the academy, and at night Lin teleported to his ranch to train and raise his dragon Oya. Sometime later, he notices that his dragon has grown and become much bigger. Aya looks at Lin angrily. At this moment, the butler says that his current dwelling is too small for a dragon. In response, the dragon begins attacking Lin with fiery magical attacks and demands a new home. Lin agrees to help her dragon and invites him to go on an excursion with him to see the world. At this point, they teleport. On the next page, they show a formidable character surrounded by a black dragon who sits on his throne near the destruction and who says why there is a dragon behind the Rift Valley. Aya and Lin teleport to Lin's world. The main character asks the dragon if he likes this place, to which the dragon responds with admiration and surprise that yes. Lin suggests that I make a small flight in a circle, to which the dragon happily agrees. Lin thinks that after a month of working with the dragon, he will not be able to get rid of the ranch, so he decides to work with him at the same time, helping to raise dragons, and the ranch will help him become stronger. He continues to fly the dragon and promises not to stop until he finds his father and clears his family's name. Flying in the sky, flying above the clouds and looking into the distance, they suddenly see an arrow flying out of nowhere in their direction. After all, they ate how they get away from it. Lin at first starts thinking that there are dragon hunters here, but when Lin looks down, he notices that something is burning in the forest and they hear, "Help, this is our last hope. Why do you need all this?" Realizing that a robbery is taking place. Then, amidst all these screams, he hears a familiar voice, and he realizes that he hears Jack's screams asking for help, and they find Jack and two soldiers tied up next to a two-headed snake. The chapter begins with the fact that they explain to us how this whole situation began. The situation begins with the fact that little Jack, sitting next to the fire, suddenly begins to worry very much about the young gentleman and decides to go hunting for him in the forest. However, when he departs from the caravan, formidable bandits appear, attack them, and after a hard battle, the bandits defeat everyone and little Jack is tied up with two soldiers. The main bandit demands that Lucas, the leader of the trading party, tell them where everything they have is. If he doesn't tell, the bandits will kill people one by one, and they show us how one of the soldiers is already dying from a snake bite. Lucas is scared to say that the loss of customers could lead to the death of the entire group. However, the main bandit remains relentless and glares at him angrily. He says that if Lucas doesn't want it in a good way, that everything will be in a bad way. And one of the snakes goes to little Jack to bite his neck, who is afraid that he will no longer be able to serve the master. However, Lin, the main character, attacks the snake with a fireball and saves Jack. While the bandits are at a loss, they stand and begin to be afraid of the main character and do not understand who it was and where he got such strength from. Jack frees himself from the ropes and falls to the ground, and Lin falls on the face with the naga of the main bandit, kicking him. From a strong blow, the main boss of the bandits hits the ground with his head. Other bandits are worried about the welfare of their boss and approaches him to help him up and see if he is injured. At this time, little Jack admires and is surprised by the strength of the young master and looks at him with glowing eyes as his savior. Then one of the bandits notices that if the fire magic was from a magician of the third rank, then he must be very powerful and thinks that it is better not to fight with such a magician. However, the boss of bandits convinces his subordinates that he is a knight of the third rank and has advantages in melee combat with a magician, and that magicians do not have such advantages. And his subordinates are infused with confidence from their main boss. He pulls out his sword and releases his purple aura, thereby showing that he has the powerful strength of a knight and begins to attack Lin, who evades his attacks. Lin understands that the boss of the bandits is very strong, and he understands that even he did not make that fireball, but Aya, and therefore at the moment he has almost no chance to defeat him. And now no one should see Aya, so it was necessary to hide him. He sent her back to the ranch. The boss of the bandits tells our main character Lin that he only knows how to dodge and does not have the strength to fight at the same time, showing that he has great strength and he fights honestly. But Lin thinks and understands that the main boss Bazatov is very fast. At the same time, he understands that his training in the room helped him improve his agility and mental strength, which gives him at the moment to dodge such fast attacks from the main boss. He decides to fight back against the main boss of the bandits, trying to conjure a fire spell, but due to the fact that he began to conjure very slowly, the boss abruptly came very close to him and removed him in the stomach with his knee. From such a strong blow, laziness beats into the nearest tree and falls. The main boss approaches him with slow steps and takes him by the head and says that Lin is knave and he has no chance in a fight with a knight of the same rank, and there was no need to start the fight because the winner had already been foretold in advance. However, at this moment, a window appears informing the butler that the first battle of the rancher has been discovered and the search for dragon magic begins. Lin does not understand what is happening at the moment of the battle, but the butler explains to him that he can use dragon magic thanks to the abilities of his animal, which received it after eating dragon fruit. The butler also explains that the more dragons you have, the more types of magic you can use, and the higher their rank, the more magic and abilities you will have. Reading all the abilities that the butler showed him, Lin realizes that he can use an instant fireball, which is his pet's skill. Lin realizes that this skill will help him in battle at the moment and understands that in order to use this magic, you do not need to conjure for a long time, and perhaps this is his only chance to win. Seeing before that he could not use magic in any way because he did not have time to conjure because the main boss was very fast and did not give him to he was conjuring. However, even this time, when he was the main character thinking, the main boss of the bandits came close to Lin and beats him and forbids him to use any magic, looking at him with his menacing gaze. He puts his foot on Lin's back and says he doesn't have a chance anymore and swings his sword to kill him. The bandit puts his foot on Lin's back and asks him if he is ready to attack. However, suddenly a window pops up on the screen where it says "Continue import," and Lin clicks yes. The bandit asks if Lin's waist can withstand his attack, but at that moment Lin turns and casts magic with a grin, creating an instant fireball that destroys half of the bandit's sword and sets the area on fire. Lin himself was surprised that he could conjure such strong magic, but he did it perfectly. The bandit and his subordinates are confused by such powerful magic and do not understand how he could create such strong magic, because before that he could not fight in any way. One of the bandits asks Lin if he can use instant magic. Lin smiles and smirks and humiliates the main boss with a little pride, says that you need to contact a magician who can use instant magic, and asks the bandit if he thinks that a knight who has lost his sword will be able to defend himself staunchly. Bandits are trying to calm down the main character in pathetic ways. They are trying in any way to ensure that our main character does not set them on fire, and one of them, like the last coward in a girly manner, tells our main character that maybe they will not be able to sit and drink something normally, but our main character conjures for the second time and all the bandits run away from fear. After the battle, Lucas is alarmed and excitedly approached Lin. Lucas asked how the healing potion worked, to which Lin replied that his wounds had healed thanks to it. Lucas said they should thank Lin because thanks to him they managed to protect a valuable product. Lin thought that they were thanking him not for saving lives, but for protecting the goods, and wondered if the goods were worth more than human lives. Lucas continued to talk to Lin, reporting the unexpected catch of the caravan, which, although it contributes to the increase in the prices of goods, is also a beautiful thing, indicating goodwill. He offered Lin to accept the gift, and when Lucas removed the cloak that hid the goods, Lin saw an elf with long blonde hair trapped inside a steel cage. Lin was surprised because he thought the elf race had disappeared when the dragons wreaked havoc all over the world. Lucas comments that no man can refuse such a cute elf they found. He adds that they are all men and should not be ashamed of their desires. These words irritate Lin, who views himself as more honest and decent than Lucas. In response, Lucas approaches Lin's ear and tells him that the elf was found by them scared and in a wounded state. He also suggests that the mercenaries who were lying around could have been killed by her. Lucas expresses his confidence that this beauty can be sold for a very high sum, not less than 1,000,000 gold. Lucas then invites Lin to the Mason Chamber of Commerce and claims that the gift in the form of an elf is just the beginning of what they can offer him. Lin listens attentively to Lucas, although she does not trust him and believes that the Chamber of Commerce may be hiding some ulterior motives. And he's not wrong since Lucas only needed the benefit. Lucas is thinking about ulterior motives and the crisis that recently occurred in the ward. He understands that if the chamber gets a few more geniuses capable of using instant magic, then it can grow to unprecedented heights. Our main character reacts negatively to this. Then, unexpectedly, Lin uses her magic to burn down the cage that the elf is in, freeing her from her shackles. Lucas looks at what is happening with horror, not understanding what is happening. He asks Lin what he is doing, to which Lin replies that he cannot accept the attitude of life as a commodity. He glares at Lucas, showing him all his dislike. Lucas says that this value is worth a lot, but Lin uses her magic again, shooting a fireball next to Lucas, making him scared. Lucas runs with the words, "Do what you want," and Lin turns to the elf, who looks at him in embarrassment. He tells her that there is no need to be afraid, he has come to give her freedom. Lin rescues an elf from a burning cage. He tells her that she is fine now, to which the elf begins to thank him. Lin introduces herself and asks what her name is. However, the elf is shy and covers her face. Lin thinks that the elf looks like a scared rabbit, but does not insist on an answer and tells her that it's okay if she doesn't want to talk. He warns her that they need to hurry up before the others have time to catch up with them. In the end, the elf admits that her name is Nick. We are shown little Jack, who is sitting by the fire and rejoicing that he finally got food for our young master. We see Lin and the elf Nick start eating next to little Jack in the cart. Nick starts eating with great appetite, and Lin offers her water, to which she agrees and drinks to the end with an unquenchable thirst. After that, Lin asks her if she will stay with him after his release or return to her clan. Nick looks down sadly and says he can't come back and begins to tell what happened. She says that she played for a very long time and got lost in the forest, and when she found her way to her clan, she saw that the whole village was destroyed and there were people everywhere. She heard how the evil soldiers were looking for elves to sell them for money. One of the soldiers heard a rustle in the bushes, saw it, and started running after Nick. She accidentally tripped and fell into a trap, and she realized that if people caught her, they would do anything to her. Therefore, she tried to escape and find her clan, but she was already trapped by people. During this story, Lin slammed his hand on the table and called the soldiers freaks. Nick looked at him strangely, but Lin explained that it wasn't her, but the soldiers who kidnapped her. He asked her if she was afraid of him, because he is also a human being. Nick replied that no, he was her savior and was different from bad people. Lin replied that it was not worth thanking him for it. Lin, after a short pause, says, "Since things have turned out this way, you can stay with me for a while, as soon as we can find some information about your clan, and you can come back." To which the elf Nick answers with confidence, "Okay, thanks." Our main character says that he is now heading to the St. Iris, and the only people who can be there besides the students are the servants. He politely asks if she can pretend to be his servant. To which the elf Nick looks at him viciously and confusedly and says that his grandfather said that the word servant is very bad. Our protagonist Lin explains that this will only be a formality, but still she should always address him as young master. He also says that as far as other people are concerned, as long as he is around, no one will offend her. Elf Nick smiles brightly and says, "All right, young master." Our main character Lin says that now they have cleared everything up, and says that it's late and she can sleep here, and he will go to sleep with little Jack. When our main character gets out of the cart, little Jack says to him, "Young master, why did you come to sleep with me?" Our main character says, "Did something happen?" Little Jack says that a beautiful girl is sleeping in the trough, and he goes to sleep with him. What our main character is angry at little Jack. So 3 days passed, and our main character Lin finally got to the Magic Academy, St. Iris. When they arrived, they were shown a large and beautiful academy. Little Jack said, "Young master, we have finally arrived." At that moment, Lin remembered that Mr. Oliver had promised to tell him about the book as soon as he got into the academy. He also thought it was possible that Mr. Oliver knew about the dragons inside the book. Suddenly, a window appeared above him with the inscription, "Attention owner, you have arrived at the St. Iris Academy. Please explore the location to get the task to open the water dragon egg." Lin receives a message from the butler saying that it is necessary to explore the location to get the task to open the water dragon egg. The main character is surprised and asks if there are other dragons. He is told that you should not neglect the opportunity to get an additional dragon, as this can make him much stronger. They show the level of the main character. He is a rancher of the first level, a magician of the first level, and has discovered only one dragon. Next, the hero learns that if he completes all the system tasks and opens 6 dragon eggs of different attributes, fire, water, earth, light, and darkness, he will receive the properties of all magical attributes and will be able to become a wise magician. The main character Lin says that the higher the risk, the greater the reward, and he is ready to do his best. He tells little Jack and elf Nick to wait for him here, as he will return in triumph. Little Jack wishes him luck, and Nick says, "All the best, young master." Lin enters the Academy of Magic and sees various magicians with their own unique abilities. which in his opinion is completely expected for such a place. One of the teachers approaches him and informs him that the assistant dean, Oliver, has left and he will not be at the academy for some time. The teachers warn Lin that even though the dean made an exception for him, there are still rules at the academy that must be followed. Lin agrees and goes with the teacher to take the entrance test. However, other students begin to discuss Lin, saying that he got into the academy through connections with the dean and probably does not have outstanding abilities in magic. They assume that Lin will be somewhere in the middle level and that they will have to move in order not to be below him. Some students say that Lin may be highly talented and be at the highest level, especially considering that he was personally chosen by the assistant dean, Oliver. When the other students were discussing our main character, he came into the room, and everyone looked at Lin admiringly. One of the teachers, Fred Edmund, announced himself as testing the magical abilities of students, including Lin Lanster, our main character. Lin confidently replied that he was ready, and Fred noted that this was very good. Lin had to put his hand on the magic crystal to show his abilities. However, when Lin started thinking about what might happen if Crystal found out about the butler and the dragon, he received a message from the butler, where it was written that Crystal only determines the magical abilities of students and cannot interact with the ranch. Our main character began to put his hand to the crystal, and it began to shake. Teacher Fred was perplexed and thought that this could be the highest level of magic that no one at the academy had ever managed to achieve before. But the crystal announced that Lin's ability level is low and his fire element is ineffective. This puzzled everyone present, including Fred. Our main character was completely at a loss and did not understand how this could happen. But then he got a reply from the butler, who explained that the ability level could be increased when Lin raised her own level. At this time, other students started judging Lin, which made him feel awkward and ashamed. The teacher approached our main character and said that since Lin had already been made an exception, his word meant little. He gave the form to the academy and said that he could come tomorrow. Our hero sadly said thank you. At that moment, someone shouted, "Lion Lanstr." Lin turned and saw a handsome guy. Next to this guy, the windows lit up, where it was written, "An important character for the task has been discovered. The name is Augustine." Position: President of the Association of Students of Pravda. Defeat him in the Tower of Magic Trials and get a fragment of the Water Dragon Egg. It will open only after completing the task in the Magic Tower of Trials. The difficulty of the task is high. Our protagonist understands that the system can also detect the possibility of other people. He thought that the first goal was very difficult. Augustine shouted, "Student," and came close to our main character. He asked to give him his uniform and badge and immediately leave the academy, St. Iris. He added that he did not know what tricks our protagonist used to deceive the assistant dean, but the scum who use such vile ways to get here should not stand here and desecrate the glory of the Iris Academy. At that moment, our main character remembered how people mocked him because they thought his father was a traitor, and they didn't even give him food. After he remembered this, he replied to Augustine, "President, why do you sound like street punks? You say that you are the president, although you trample on the fate of other people, simply because you have more privileges. Aren't you insulting the academy's name yourself?" One of Augustine's friends warns him that Lin will not pass the tests at the academy and will be kicked out. In response to this, Lin clenches her fist hard, but decides to keep control of her emotions. He realizes that he can't just give up. Lin realizes that he must preserve his reputation in order to continue studying, and leaves, ignoring the ridicule behind his back. He understands that studying at the academy will not be easy, but it will be the best start to become a magician of the sage rank. Lin understands that he needs to get stronger, and he can't rely on the system alone. He decides to use his personal power to make the critics around him regret their words. Lin teleports to the ranch. The butler meets him and informs him that the dragon fruit has ripened today and a small dwelling brings a normal income. However, Dragon Aya looks annoyed, and after Lin asks what is going on, the dragon asks why his habitat is not enlarged. Lin promises to increase the habitat in 2 days and offers him a dragon fruit to comfort him. But Aya refuses to eat it and is angry at Lin. saying that he already offered it 2 days ago. Lin decides to persuade Aya to eat the fruit to calm him down, and says that next time he will increase the habitat. However, Aya declares that he doesn't care about Lin's problems, and Lin calls the dragon a child. After that, Lin decides to leave the ranch and go back. The moment of teleportation, he begins to think about his income from the fiery dwelling, which brings him 500 gold a day. He understands that he needs 10,000 gold to improve the A's home. Lin finds herself in her bed in the morning and thinks about how to make money quickly. He starts to get dressed, but suddenly he hears a shout. "Young master, it's breakfast time." It was Nick, an elf in a maid's dress. She says she was told it was the right clothes for her and asks if it's weird. Lin reassures her, saying that these are common servant clothes in the human world. Lin feels that she can offend her and regrets that only students and their servants can attend the academy. He regrets that he wanted to buy a more beautiful dress, but Nick claims that she will never be uncomfortable next to the gentleman. She hugs him, and at that moment, Lin realizes how much she likes the clean and fresh smell of the forest that comes from Nick. Lin suggests that they both get cleaned up and go to school. Nick agrees, and they begin to prepare for the school day. Then our main character goes to the academy, with thoughts that after the last incident, he became quite popular. When he asked one of the teachers where his class was, the teacher gave him a paper with directions to Building A, where his class, 1B, is located in Zone 1. Although Lin knew that his relationship with his fellow students was not the best, he thought that they were not making his life intentionally difficult, except for one teacher. When Lin entered the classroom, he noticed the angry look of a red-haired tall woman who turned out to be a Yisha teacher. She was angry and ordered him to stand. She said that Lin's only ability was to make connections, and that she would not allow him to be in her classroom if all the students of the school did not mind his presence. At this time, Lin heard other students discussing him and saying that he was the Lin who got here, and that he would never be able to sit next to them because of his weakness. Lin got angry and asked the butler to scan the abilities of all the students. He saw that most of the students had first or second rank abilities, and he wondered how such a top academy could train such dermo eaters. Our main character asked the teacher what the main topic of classes in this class was. She was surprised that Lin asked such a question, given his weak skills, but he explained that if he was given a chance, he would prove that he was better than all the students present and would be able to study hard in this classroom. However, the other students did not believe that he would be able to achieve the same success as them. In response, the teacher shouts at all the students to shut up and says that she is interested in this offer. She offers our main character to raise the stakes and gives him a week to prepare for the test. If he takes the first place, then she will allow him to visit the audience. If he can't pass the test, then she will throw him out of the academy territory personally, and he will never be able to get into the academy. Lin, suddenly imagining all the potential consequences of his actions, realizes that losing on the test will lead to his expulsion from the academy. At this moment, the teacher offers him to accept her conditions. However, at the same time, a window appears on the screen with the main task, to get a water dragon egg. The task is called Pari Yeshi. In order to complete this task, you need to take first place on the potions test, the difficulty of which is average. If successful, the main character will receive a fragment of a water dragon egg, as well as magical experience. At this moment, our protagonist realizes that he has forgotten about the butler and that he will have to complete this task. However, he understands that he will have to do everything possible to take first place on the test and agrees to the teacher's conditions. Lin left the classroom, followed by teacher Yisha. She noticed that Lin didn't lose his self-confidence, even after he wasn't well received. She also thought that maybe all the rumors that were going around about Lin could be false, and began to feel interested in him. She expressed the hope that Lin would still be able to surprise her. This caused her great interest in the main character. After that, we are shown the academic library, which Lin enters, and he understands why it is called the most beautiful place. He starts looking at the books, and suddenly hears someone discussing him from behind. Addressing them, he sees two guys who begin to say that Lin got here through connections and should not be here. They start talking about why a freshman is in the library at such a time, Was he really thrown out of the classroom on the very first day and for his stupidity? But Lin thinks they're just talking nonsense. At this moment, a blue-haired consultant with glasses appears, who begins to explain to them that they must behave quietly in the library, otherwise they will receive a fine. One of the guys tells her that she's not that good at her job, and his friend calms him down and takes him out of the library. Lin thinks this girl saved him from an uncomfortable situation. The counselor comes to Lin and apologizes for what happened, but Lin says she doesn't need to apologize because she wasn't the cause of his problems. However, the consultant says that this is part of her duties, and because of her, Lin could not calmly read books. Lin enters into a conversation with a consultant and notices that she has a huge sense of guilt. He asks her to help him find books about magic potions, and she happily agrees. The consultant suggests that he address her as Vivian, and with magical abilities, gets the necessary books from the library. Lin admires the books and thinks he didn't expect anything less from the academy. Vivian tells him that these books contain a lot of information about magic potions, and also warns that the potions exam will be practical, not written. She asks Lin if he will be able to use his knowledge to cope with the exam. Lin wonders why Vivian is so worried about him. At this moment, the butler's hint appears, which says that wealth and beauty can only be achieved through hard work and study. Lin tells Vivian that he is confident in his abilities and does not need to worry. He thanks her for being the only one who didn't tease him and communicated with him normally, despite the rumors that are circulating about him. Lin says goodbye and promises to treat her to food when she gets the first place. When Lin leaves, Vivian clasps her hands and remembers the order to get closer to Lin as soon as possible. And she told him that she wasn't apologizing for the guys. After Lin received the necessary books about magic potions from the consultant Vivian, we see his house at the academy. Little Jack informs him that the food is ready, but Lin replies that he will eat later when he is done with studying books. Little Jack complains that Lin spends days and nights reading books, but Lin explains that he needs to assimilate this information and then put it into practice. 5 days pass, and we see a tired Lin lying on the floor. He wonders if the key to solving his problem may be related to Ai. Lin practices potion magic. He says that creating magic potions requires stable mental strength, and that beginners usually don't have it. He also says that to create such potions, it is necessary to extract dragon saliva as an additional ingredient. We are shown how Lin takes saliva from Ai, and he claims that even the most ordinary person without magical abilities can create a flawless potion that can compete with the greatest in this business. After that, we are shown the day of the start of testing, where students must create their own potions. Lin manages to create a potion, but other students begin to suspect him of cheating because he was able to concentrate his mind so well and create such a high-quality potion. One of the students says that Lin definitely cheated, but teacher Yisha calms him down, saying that the classroom is very noisy and that some students may fail the test if this continues. Yisha looks at Lin and thinks that he has very small abilities. Still, she understands that even with such small abilities, he was able to make such a high-quality potion. After teacher Yisha praised Lin for the quality of his potion, she suggested that he go up to the department and make another potion in front of the whole class. Lin wondered why the teacher suggested it to him and asked her if she thought he was cheating. To this, one of the students stated that the teacher would naturally not trust him, and that Lin most likely used an additional ingredient to improve his mental abilities. This student is sure that Lin used this method because he could not have reached such a level in 7 days of self-study. The student explained that this is dragon saliva, which helps beginners to stabilize their mental abilities. Lane Lanster accepts the challenge of Yisha's teacher and agrees to another potion in front of the whole class. He feels inordinate excitement because he has to demonstrate his potion-making skills in front of a lot of his comrades. Lin recalls that before this test, when he was lying in his room, he asked the butler that time on the training ground was 7 times slower than in the real world. Lin decided to use this fact to his advantage. He asked the butler if it was possible to start potion training on this site, and received an affirmative answer. Lin trained a lot before the test, made many unsuccessful attempts, but did not despair. He understood that this was the only way to achieve success in this matter. And then the day came when Lin had to demonstrate his skills. He begins the potion-making process using the stalks of ghost vines, the saliva of a demonic rhinoceros snake, and a stone of fire and water. Lin acts slowly and carefully, checking the correctness of her actions every time. In the end, he successfully completes his work and gets an approving look from the teacher. Lin feels proud of his success and understands that his hard work and perseverance were not in vain. Teacher Yisha admires Lin's skills and thinks that he has an impeccable mental balance that allows him to create such high-quality potions. She is convinced that he is the best student she has ever been able to teach. However, other students doubt that Lin was able to achieve such a result without additional ingredients and with such a short training period. They start to think that they might have underestimated him and his skills. After teacher Yisha said her words about Lin, she continued to talk about how important it is to develop your talents, no matter how long it takes. She says that even the most talented people can remain unsuccessful if they do not work hard and do not train for a long time. She believes that Lin has great potential and that he will be able to reach great heights in his magical career. Teacher Yisha says that Lin has a rare quality of perseverance, which helped him overcome many difficulties and achieve such success in potions. She admits that the initial mistake in Lin's assessment was her own mistake, and she is glad that he is still at the academy and continues to study. While Lin listened to the teacher's words, he felt that his heart was filled with joy and pride for his work and achievements. He understood that without constant training and perseverance, he would never have achieved such results. Now Lin was ready for new challenges, and he was confident that in the future he could become a great magician and an inspiration for other students of the academy. After the teacher apologized to Lin for forbidding him to attend her classes, she announced that he won first place thanks to his own efforts and many hours of practice. A notification about the completed task appeared on the screen, which brought Lin a fragment of a water dragon egg, 20 magic experience, and an additional reward, teleportation array 1. Later we see Lin sitting under a tree and talking to the butler. He says that he did not want to disgrace his place and use dragon saliva in such a simple task. He wants to use it to achieve wealth. According to Lin, he did not rely on his dragon and underwent heavy training, which earned the respect of his butler. He's not sure how much that makes him wise, but he knows he wants to succeed. Lin is experimenting with potions in her house, constantly improving her skills and using more and more new ingredients. He often spent sleepless nights experimenting with different combinations, but each time he got new and exciting results. He was delighted with how useful the dragon's saliva is and how it helps him to prepare more advanced potions. Lin was sure that his potions would be able to help people and bring him a big profit. He stated that one bottle of potion could be sold for 1,000 gold and was going to go to the merchant tomorrow and sell them. However, Lin remembered that Aya was unhappy and warned that he could burn everything down if Lin did not make him a new place to live. Lin told him to be quiet and reminded him that Oya also lives in the ranch. Looking out the window, Lin thought that by selling the potion, he would finally be able to build a new habitat for the dragon, and he would finally get a new home. He wanted to create a place for Ai, where he could feel comfortable and free. He noticed that it was late enough and wondered if Vivian had finished her work in the library. Earlier, Lin had promised that if he took first place, he would invite her to dinner. He thought that without her help with books, he would not have been able to succeed in his knowledge. Lin got up and started preparing to go to the library. When Lin came to the library, Lin looked around in confusion, trying to make out the familiar silhouette of Vivian. He looked through all the rows of books, checked every place to read, and even looked into the toilet, thinking that maybe she just rested there. However, all his efforts were in vain. Viviana never appeared. Suddenly, Lin was touched by someone's soft touch on his shoulder. He turned around abruptly and saw an unfamiliar girl in front of him. Lin stepped back in fright, feeling his heart beating and preparing for defense. However, the girl smiled at him and said that she knew who he was looking for. "You're looking for Vivian, aren't you?" She asked again, and Lin nodded in response. He was amazed at how easily this stranger was able to recognize him. The girl continued, "She is preparing to make a confession to you behind the school. If you go there quickly, you may be able to catch her before that moment. Lin thanked the girl in confusion, trying to realize what was happening. Lin was confused and asked what was going on. The girl started laughing and said that even if he was going to refuse, he wanted to do something vulgar with her. Lin replied negatively to this, and the girl began to push him. He asked her not to do it, but at that moment a window appeared, and the butler informed Lin about a new task for the water dragon egg. The task was called the princess that Vivian is carrying. He will be able to get a fragment from the water dragon for this. We are also shown that Lin has 1 fragment out of 10. Lin was annoyed and angry at the butler for always showing up at the wrong time. The girl who was nearby told him that he should hurry up, as Vivian said she would be waiting for him. She gave him a bee and told him to keep an eye on her and then find Vivian. Lin began to think that something was wrong. He remembered that he had seen Vivian only once and could not understand how she could fall in love with him. He thought that this task was more like a joke and decided that it was not as easy as it seemed. Lin comes out of the library lost in thought, but suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by loud screams that come from afar. He immediately realizes that these are the screams of his girlfriend Vivian, and without hesitation rushes in the direction of the sound, ready to help her in any circumstances. As he approaches the scene, he notices strange levitating pillars of stones that look like part of some kind of ritual. Lin cautiously approaches them and notices a teleporter that suddenly appeared among these pillars. This causes him even more surprise and the question, why is there such a strange place in the academy? But then his gaze falls on the inscription on the teleporter, which makes him freeze. There it was recorded that Vivian Mason entered, waiting for the second participant. Lin does not understand what is happening and why Vivian is here, when suddenly he is pushed by some sorceress with her magic directly into the teleporter. He gets into the teleport, and then the test begins. It turns out that the girl from the library who talked about Vivian's whereabouts was actually a pathetic guy who tricked Lin into turning into a girl. The guy explains that when he was bullied by undergraduates, no one stood up for him. However, when Lin ended up here, where everyone thinks he's trash and no one wants to help, Vivian stood up for him. He says that she loves helping people very much and should do it for the rest of her days. When Lin was on the other side of the teleport, a picture of horror suddenly appeared in front of him. His girlfriend Vivian was bound by magic chains and could not respond to his screams. There were steel spikes almost everywhere around, and Lin knew that if Vivian fell on them, it would be her end. He didn't understand what to do in this situation and how he could help her. I don't understand what to do. He was standing in a stupor. Suddenly, Lin felt that someone was approaching from behind. He cautiously turned around and noticed a huge wolf that had come out of the teleport. Lin realized that it could be deadly and prepared for a fight. A mysterious creature shrouded in magic appears from the portal. Suddenly, it starts growling and abruptly throws Lin to the ground, leaving the hero in shock and pain. He can't figure out how this creature got here, but his fright and doubts make it difficult to concentrate. The creature begins to attack Lin, who, although on his feet, feels that his life is hanging by a thread. But suddenly, Lin realizes that it is important not to get under attack and dodge the blows. He jumps up, avoiding the creature's next hit. At this time, the beast easily breaks the floor. Lin wonders how he can jump so high, and remembers that after gaining experience and completing tasks, he reached a new level and became a magician of the 2nd rank. With this thought, Lin realizes that his physical abilities have also improved along with the level. This gives him the confidence that he can defeat the creature. The beast approaches Lin, but the hero successfully dodges the bite and notes how fast and flexible he has become. The beast tries to attack again, but Lin easily dodges and realizes that his speed corresponds to the speed of the beast, and his attacks will be effective. Lin notices that he is above the beast and begins to conjure fire magic. This spell is aimed directly at the creature's head, causing it to fall on steel spikes that stood nearby. The hero smiles, realizing that his plan worked, and he defeated the creature. At this moment, we are shown that some of the chains that held Vivian are being destroyed, and she begins to fall on steel spikes. Lin at this moment shouts, "Vivian." But still, it does not completely fall, because several chains still held him. It was just a little bit left for her to fall on the peaks. Lin thinks at this moment that he was so focused on the battle that he completely forgot about Vivian. Lin begins to wonder why she dropped lower. It's possible because he defeated the wolf, and he broke some steel spikes while falling. Lin realizes that the wolf is still alive, and at that moment he thought that the fewer steel peaks there are, the lower Vivian descends. And he thinks that if he doesn't get rid of them, then how can he save her? Thinking about how to save her, at one point he says that he knows exactly how he can help. He approaches Vivian and shouts at her to hold on and wait for him, and says that there are many experts at the academy and they will be able to save her. Vivian is crying and can't say anything because his mouth is tied. Lin remembers how he got here and thinks that he got here quite recently because of the teleport, and remembers that a magical beast also came out because of the teleport. He turns to go to this teleport, but realizes that he is not there. Lin thinks about what's going on around him. He needs to find a way out of this place. He thinks that perhaps the only way out of this situation is to call the Eye. He does not understand whether Vivina can be trusted, and whether she cannot tell anyone about Aya. Lin realizes that the girl from the library, whom he met earlier, could have led them into this trap. He begins to think why it was necessary to kill them. At this moment, the wolf starts attacking Lin from behind. He resolutely turns around and delivers a fiery magic strike that kills the beast. Suddenly, the butler appears, informing Lin that he has gained experience by defeating the phantoms of the wolf. But he says that his assignment is outside the jurisdiction of the ranch, and he needs to find out more information on his own. Lin can't hide his annoyance, and he threatens the butler that he will smash him if he shows up again at the wrong time. Some kind of energy comes out of the wolf, directed towards Vivian. The magic ball that appeared from the body of the dead wolf seemed incomprehensible and mysterious to Lin. However, as he watched what was happening, Lin began to realize that this ball had a special meaning for Vivian. As it turned out, the ball helped Vivian to approach the safe zone. This discovery inspired Lin and forced her to focus on the task, to kill as many phantoms as possible to ensure Vivian's maximum safety. However, 2 more wolf phantoms suddenly appear, which greatly surprises Lin. He begins to think that every time he kills an enemy, their number automatically increases by 2. He associates this with a mechanism that seems familiar to him. Remembering, Lin comes to the conclusion that he read about a similar mechanism in the student Barnaul. There, third-year students and above can enter the world of trials and fight demonic creatures. In addition, Lin recalls that he read that teachers adjust a mechanical device to the capabilities of students, and the tests will be stopped when the student wins and does the task, and only after that you can automatically go back. Thus, Lin realizes that he needs to kill the phantom wolves until Vivian is completely safe. In the process of fighting, Lin begins to think about why the wolves have the name Phantom. He comes to the conclusion that this is due to a test for undergraduates. He also thinks that the key to passing the tests is to save Vivian. When Lin kills one of the wolves with a fire fist, he gets 1 experience point. As he continues to fight, he gains experience for each wolf destroyed. However, the number of wolves increases, and Lin begins to realize that it will be increasingly difficult for him to defend himself. He understands that every wolf killed is divided into 2, and that he will not be able to defeat them with fireballs alone. In addition, he realizes that if he continues such a fight for a long time, there is a risk of falling off a cliff. Lin begins to remember his abilities received from Ai, and realizes that in addition to the instant fireball, he has other abilities that can be useful in the fight. At the same time, a window appeared with available abilities that included Shield, Bite, Claw, and Instant Fire Magic. Lin chose a shield and created a red shield around his arms. The wolf tried to bite him, but instead bit the shield, clinging to it with its teeth. Lin realized that the force of the wolf's bite was stronger than the shield, and other wolves began to approach him. He tried to escape, and eventually threw the wolf along with the shield into the abyss, realizing that their fight would never end. Lin decides to use another magic and shouts Claw to throw off the 2 wolves. He understands that although he does a lot of damage, he does not solve the main problem. Here he receives a message from the butler about getting experience points. But instead of continuing to fight the raging wolves, Lin notices a magic ball flying out of the abyss, where he dropped one of the wolves. He realizes that throwing off the wolves can activate the mechanism and begins to throw them one by one. At the end, he stops and says that there is no need to fight anymore. Vivian frees herself from her chains and runs to Lin, crying and hugging him. Lin calms her down and says that everything will be fine. They think that the test is over and soon they will be teleported from there, but they notice a staircase leading down. Vivian begins to heal him with her magic. During the treatment, they begin to talk, and Vivian begins to apologize for not being able to help Lin when he was fighting. She tells him that she was immediately tied up when she got into this world, and therefore could not help anything. She thanks Lin for saving her, and is very sorry that he got hurt. At this point, Vivian begins to cry, and Lin begins to comfort her. He tells her that there is no need to apologize, because she could not do anything, and they both need to be saved. He tells her that he thought that if he freed her, they would be able to get out of this world, but he did not assume that there would be another stage here. Lin suggests going downstairs, but before he does, he asks Vivian if she knows anything about these training worlds. She replies that the training worlds are only for undergraduates, and she has no useful information. Lin continues to comfort Vivian, telling her that there is no need to apologize and blame yourself. He tells her to relax and not worry about the future. Lin tells her that he has recently killed a lot of wolves, and that there may be even more dangers ahead, but he will protect her. In the end, Lin reaches out her hand to help Vivian up. But Vivian at this moment takes out a magic staff and declares that she will also fight alongside him. After Lin and Vivian discussed their experiences, they continued down the stairs. Below, they noticed bats rushing towards them. Vivian was scared, but Lin quickly killed all the mice. He smiled and said that she apparently really wanted to fight alongside him. Vivian shook her head negatively and said it was an accident and it won't happen again. As they descended, they noticed that the fog had begun to dissipate. But suddenly Vivian heard that the stairs behind them began to collapse. She was in a stupor of fear, but Lin quickly realized what was happening and took her hand, saying that they needed to run. The stairs were collapsing fast, and at one point they both started falling down. Lin realizes that the situation has no way out, and he needs to do something. He shouts and calls the butler to call him, but he is interrupted by Vivian, who begins to conjure magic and creates air wings for herself. She takes Lin in her arms and flies with him in the air. Lin wonders how she knows such wind magic, and she explains that one should not forget that she studied for 2 years. At this moment, a window appears on the screen that reads, "Congratulations to the owner on the successful completion of the task, the princess carried by Vivian." Lin realizes that the system task has been completed, and he has been given a reward in the form of experience and a fragment in the form of a water dragon egg. He realizes that he owes Vivian a lot, and that she not only saved him, but also helped him complete the task. Suddenly, another message from the butler appears on the screen, congratulating Lin on getting the 3rd level already. Lin and Vivian gently land on the ground. The stones under their feet begin to shimmer with a bright light. Lin begins to explain to Vivian about the shimmering stones and how they glow when a person steps on them. They see the road leading to the portal at the end, but Lin believes that the path to the portal is not safe and you need to be careful. He thinks that the person who threw them into this place would not have let them go just like that, and most likely there is some kind of trap here. Vivian suggests going straight, but Lin insists on checking for traps and risks on the way to the portal. He takes a stone and throws it on the road to check for traps and dangers. The stone activates one of the traps, and Lin realizes that not everything is so simple and safe in this world.